Gentleman, Mr. Issa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Kotz, I'm going to follow up right where that left off. If I give you bad information about something I want an ethics opinion on, and you give me a clean bill of health, that doesn't preclude later recrimination, right?
Absolutely, because in that case, you could sort of use the process to get yourself out of some later recrimination.
And ultimately, Mr. Becker, who we'll hear from later, is a senior attorney with independent knowledge of many things, including, quite frankly, he's a member of the bar. These are independent actions which the Justice Department is going to look at whether he knew himself.
Right, and in fact, he was the alternate designated agency ethics official.
Thank you. You've taken me to the next question, which is inherently throughout government, not just in what Chairwoman Schapiro wants to fix, but throughout government, don't we have a need for a greater level of independence than, in fact, the head of all the lawyers, whom, in fact, may have lots of lawyers working with them and so on, who goes to another person that works for them for an ethics opinion? Isn't that a level of independence that is government-wide to be rethought by this committee?
Yeah, I would think it would apply to other agencies as well. Absolutely. It's very hard to be completely independent when you are subordinate to somebody, when they're reviewing and evaluating you. It's a very difficult thing to do.
And from your study, from your investigation, is there an inconsistency in this answer, in your opinion, that Mr. Becker got versus similar answers that somebody else would have gotten?
Yes, we do relate some concerns we have about other individuals where even with respect to the Madoff liquidation, there was a much broader request to recuse. And while with respect to Mr. Becker, the determination was one aspect shouldn't necessarily impact the other, when it came to a lower level staff attorney in the Office of General Counsel, just a small amount of work in her law firm on an unrelated bankruptcy matter, the determination was made she should be recused from all Madoff-related activities.
So they erred on the side of caution, except in the case of Mr. Becker.
Yes, that was a concern, certainly.
Okay. Madam Chair, you oversee a great many public companies. Do those public companies have to declare contingent assets and contingent liabilities that they have on their financial statements? In other words, under GAAP accounting, don't you have to actually disclose the fair contingent liability or contingent asset? If you sign, for example, famously, we're all looking at this in our companies, and I do have some companies falling under some of these requirements. If you've got a lease, you've got a value on that lease, even if you're making the payment every year. So you have to evaluate that. So all those contingent assets and liabilities, public accounting is trying to grapple with how to state them, correct? Even though they're not always liabilities that have any effect this year on the P&L.
Right.
In a sense, for this committee, and particularly for the Reform Committee that would be looking government-wide, shouldn't ethics disclosures very much reach out and say, what are your contingent liabilities and your contingent assets? Are you the signer on your child's credit card? Are you the signer on your mother's home? Aren't those, in fact, things which could very much affect, just as Mr. Becker had a $140,000 or so contingent, or $130-some thousand contingent windfall if he convinced a standard to be in his favor?
I think it's a great question. I think some of that is actually already required to be disclosed. Some of the things that are not just personal to you, but to your spouse, to your children, trusts you might manage for a disabled a family member, those kinds of things. But I think it's very much worth looking at because anything that has the potential to create a conflict of interest, even if it's not directly owned by you, is something we should be looking at.
Mr. Kotz, was there any indication on Mr. Becker's disclosure of this contingent value or contingent liability if the Madoff clawback came in?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's an excellent point. In this case, we found that the ethics official's advice was based on some incorrect assumptions, but we also found that there wasn't an effort to seek out that contingent information. In other words, there wasn't an effort when Mr. Becker came in and gave Mr. Lennox the information to try to understand exactly what this means. How will this impact things? What if this happens? What if that happens? Just like you're saying, in a contingent fashion. Had he done that, he would have seen that there was this connection between what Mr. Becker was working on and his financial interest.
So the candid disclosure that we expect from public companies didn't occur in this case?
It did not.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.